Hello, this is Alex Carroll. I'm doing my project part 2 on the analysis of my ZenMap scan results. My first 5 open ports I found were port 21 TCP. It's a file transfer protocol, which is FTP. FTP is used to transfer files between computers on a network. This port is open with VSFTPD 2.3.4, which allows for anonymous FTP login. This can be a big security risk if not properly secured. The second port is port 22 TCP. It's a SSH, a secure shell. SSH is used for secure remote login and command execution. Provides encrypted communication channels. Older versions can be vulnerable. Port 23, the third port is port 23, TCP. This is Telnet service. Telnet is used for remote login sessions. It sends data in plain text, making it insecure for modern use. Open Telnet ports can be exploited by attackers for unauthorized access. The fourth port is port 25 TCP. It's a simple mail transfer protocol, SMTP. SMTP is used for sending emails. This port is open with postfix, SMTPD, and if not properly configured, can be used for sending spam or malicious emails. Excuse me. The fifth port is port 53 TCP, domain name system, so DNS. DNS translates domain names to IP addresses. This port is open with ISC bind 9.9.4.2, and if misconfigured or outdated, can be exploited for DNS cache poisoning or other DNS-based attacks. The critical vulnerabilities, found 2. The first ID is 32314. Name is CVE 2010-0926. The vulnerability affects VSFTPD 2.3.4. It allows remote attackers to bypass authentication and gain access through certain conditions related to network and user authentication state. The second vulnerability ID is 33850. It's CVE 2008-0166 is the name. This vulnerability affects OpenSSH. It involves a predictable random number generator, which can allow remote attackers to obtain sensitive information and possibly bypass authentication by leveraging knowledge of shared keys. Some protection mechanisms. You can update and patch management. Make sure all software, including FTP and SSH services, are updated to the latest versions to fix the vulnerabilities. Number 2, the firewall configuration. Limit access to essential services only. For example, you could disable Telnet, which is port 23, and using more secure alternatives like SSH, port 22. And third, you could do access controls. Implement strong access controls and authentication mechanisms. Disable anonymous FTP access and enforce strong password policies for SSH. Fourth solution for update patch management would be intrusion detection and prevention systems, which is IDPS in short. Deploy IDPS to monitor network traffic and detect suspicious activities such as unauthorized access attempts or unusual patterns. And then finally, we got regular security audits. Conduct regular security audits and vulnerability assessments to find and fix new vulnerabilities promptly. Some important service recommendations based on the analysis. The ports and services likely need to remain open would be port 22 TCP SSH needed for secure remote management, port 25 TCP SMTP is necessary for email services, port 53 TCP is the DNS and it's essential for domain name resolution. Port 80 TCP HTTP is needed for web services, and then port 443 TCP HTTPS is necessary for secure web services. Other ports should be evaluated and closed if they don't need them. My report for the IT management and systems administration staff is we need to improve our system security through this scan, finding a bunch of critical vulnerabilities. So I found these solutions. So port 21 FTP used for file transfers. Consider turning off the anonymous access. Port 22 is used for secure remote login. Make sure it's updated and enforce strong authentication. Port 23 is Telnet, insecure for remote login, so turn it off and replace it with SSH. Port 25 SMTP used for sending emails. Make sure it is properly set up so no one misuses it. Port 53 DNS used for domain name resolution. Make sure it's securely configured. So some of the critical vulnerabilities, the CVE 2010-0926, it allows remote attackers to bypass authentication, so update or replace the VSFTPD. Then the second critical vulnerability is CVE 2008-0166, the Open SSH. It affects random number generator, compromising authentication, so update OpenSSH to the latest version. Some protection mechanisms would be update and patch management, so just update all software, fix all the problems. Number 2, firewall configuration. Limit access to essential services and close the unnecessary ports. And then access controls, number 3. Enforce strong authentication, turn off insecure services. 4th, IDPS. Deploy intrusion detection and prevention systems to monitor and respond to threats. Number 5, and finally, regular security audits. So conduct regular audits to find and fix vulnerabilities. So my conclusion is, by following these protection steps, Aim Higher College can improve its security and protect against threats. Regular updates, strict access controls, and continuous monitoring are the key to maintaining a secure network. Some recommendations would be regularly update all services and software, turn off or replace Telnet, implement strong access controls and authentication, deploy IDPS to monitor network traffic. By following all these recommendations, Aim Higher College can better protect its system and data from potential cyber threats. Thank you for listening.